In this lesson, we'll learn how to paint a quick and believable texture for our character's eyes. All right, fantastic. So here we go. This is kind of where we're at. I've basically got the head patch revealed here, the other patch hidden. And we actually don't need all of this geometry visible in order to paint the hair. So let's do this. Let's just come over to our face selection mode. I'll go ahead and hold S, select the shell for the head. And I'll hold Shift and select the shell for the eyes. There we go, fantastic. So we now have just the geometry selected we need to paint and basically make decisions on that paint with. So let's come in and hide the unselected. All right, fantastic. So ready to come in and do this guy's eyes. Now over here inside our color layer stack, let's go ahead and just simply create a new group. And I'll call this something like eyes. And we need some paint layers inside there. So I'll go ahead and drop one inside. And let's go ahead and call that first paint layer the sclera. That's going to be the white of the eye. And we'll make a new one here for the iris. All right, fantastic. So now I'll select the sclera layer here, and let's come over to the UVs. Because I want to show you that basically both of the pieces of eye geometry, their UVs are overlapping here. So we're only going to need to paint one eye. Now let's go ahead and select just the eye geometry here. Or the eye UV. Go ahead and grab our paint tool and hold K to grab maybe just a hard round brush. And we'll turn off that flow setting, and I'll hold J to pull up my color pop-up as well. And we're going to choose kind of a yellowish white color, something like that. We'll just come in and drop that in. And bake it down. All right, fantastic. So that's a little bit on the I don't know, zombie side. It feels like his eyes are glowing. We'll fix that here in just a little bit. We're going to revisit the sclera, but for now, let's go ahead and select the iris, and I'm also going to turn on my wireframe. That's going to help us position where the irises are going to go. So basically, based on the topology here, I'm looking at kind of this loop of polygons right here. And I'm thinking that the iris should probably fall right on top of that and maybe be a little bit larger than that. I think that'll center it up and it'll look about right for his eyes. So we'll come back over to the UV view, zoom in on that shell, and you can see there's that, that ring of polygons that we're talking about. Now, I'm going to go ahead and hit the home key on my keyboard, and that's going to hide these palettes over on the right. And for limiting basically where my paint's going to go, I'm going to draw a selection with my marquee selection tool. We'll want to go ahead and turn it on to elliptical marquee mode. So we'll come in and just simply drag out a circle. Just kind of drag that out as close as you can. And I'm going to go ahead and center that ring up inside there. And that looks pretty close to where I want it. It's a little bit larger than that ring. So at this point, let me go ahead and grab my paint tool. And let's go ahead and hold the J key again. And for his eyes, I'm going to go ahead and work from darkest value to lightest value. So I'm going to choose like a really dark brown here. We'll go ahead and just paint that in. And bake it down. If we come over to the orthographic view and look at that, that actually looks pretty good. I think if anything, it might be able to be just a little bit larger. So let me undo a few times until I see that paint lift up off the canvas. There we go. And we'll come back to the UV view and clear the buffer with a Control-Shift-C. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. And make sure that's centered up, which it looks to be. Drop in that iris again. And there we go. That looks great. I think we are well on our way. So let's come back over to the UV view. Now at this point, we could come in and try and use that same circle to kind of position the pupil, but the rest of the iris is really going to be out of the range in terms of painting. So let me just clear that selection off, and I'm going to draw a little bit smaller circle here for the pupil. We'll go with something about, let's go with something like that. And we'll just zoom out just a little bit and center it up. All right, so you may be wondering, why am I drawing out the pupil with a selection? That's a very dark value. We're not going to be able to paint black on top of that, which you're right. We're not going to focus on painting the pupil. We're going to paint the striations around the pupil. So we'll come in here and just invert our selection right up here. And let's go ahead and grab our paint tool again. And this time, let's go with maybe the default brush here. We'll just shrink it down really, really small. Maybe something like that. And I'm going to choose a couple of different colors. We'll choose maybe kind of a medium brown, sort of like that. Kind of a medium dark brown. And I'm going to hit the X key and choose a little bit lighter brown here. Maybe something like that. So let's go ahead and try those two. So we'll go ahead and hit the X, and we'll start with the darker brown first. And I'm just going to really quickly make some basically squiggly lines that work from the center of the pupil out towards the edge of the iris. So now I'm not too concerned right now with going beyond the edge. We can always come back and clean that up with the clear painting mode. So basically what we're trying to do is raise the value in the areas around the pupil so that it doesn't look like just a big black circle. Now we've got a lot of work to do in terms of raising that value, but in terms of making this eye look as detailed as we can, I would start with kind of a color like this and give it a nice coating, if you will. You can see here my pressure sensitive properties are turned on, so I'm able to press a little bit harder in areas and get a little bit brighter orange, or a little bit brighter brown rather. And in areas I can press a little bit softer and I can barely get any brown. So, but the result of this is that we're starting to get a little bit of a striated look starting to occur. Now, if you overstriate the iris, you can always sample that darker value that we started with and begin to kind of touch it up. Let me go ahead and maybe do that here. I'll go ahead and sample maybe an area right here, and maybe I want to come in and just kind of clean that area up. But notice here I'm not able to paint inside the iris because that selection is limiting my painting area. All right, let me hit the X key, and I'm going to come in with this brighter brown. Just kind of start to step my way up the value scale. Now, in terms of painting this one in, we can start to kind of pick out some of the details that we have already established with that previous brown. Now, if you have watched my Painting Realistic Eyes course in Mari, then what I'm doing here is essentially a really quick scaled down version of the workflow that we worked on in that course. So I'm going to come in here and do this really, really quickly, but you know, it really doesn't matter because the eyes are not going to be that close to the camera. So in this case, we can get away with, you know, painting some quick detail as long as it is believable from whatever position the camera is at. So we'll come in and paint in some areas like that. Make sure we don't have any weird little blotches in there. You can see how I'm starting to press a little bit harder, and we're starting to essentially establish kind of a rough gradient in terms of values. We started off with that black color, and now we're starting to get brighter and brighter and brighter. So we could continue doing this. We might even make another pass, but with each pass that we get brighter and brighter, I'm going to paint less and less. So let's say we want to hold down the J key and go a little bit brighter, a little more yellow maybe. So now I can come in here and I can start to just pick out certain areas. Maybe this area here. Now I haven't baked this down once, so we're basically painting all of this information right into the buffer. Now, if we need to, we can always come back in with that darker value and start to kind of knock some of these areas back a little bit. But I think for the most part, I'm looking pretty good right now. Again, I'm using both my background and foreground colors to my advantage here. I'm able to hit the X key on my keyboard to cycle between the two. And remember, I have that darker value currently set to the one I'm not painting with right now. So let's go ahead and bake that down. And we'll switch over here and take a look. And you can see how that's starting to look pretty good. So I don't want to do a whole lot more in terms of the irises. I don't think that that's going to be time well spent in terms of the detail we're going to be able to see. So let's hit Control D to deselect. And we're going to switch gears again, and we're going to work a little bit on the sclera. So when it comes to the sclera, let's go ahead and maybe grab a brush out of our project shelf. I'm going to go ahead and go with this one right here. And if I hit the home key, show you exactly what that looks like. That's kind of what we're dealing with here. So we're going to come down and ramp the opacity down on that so we get sort of this cloudy look. And let me go ahead and hide those palettes again. Now for this one, let's go ahead and we can start off by jumping over here to the UV. So again, we're painting just this information here. And basically what we need to do is first set a color. So let's come in and choose kind of a dark red color, something like that. Maybe a little more saturated. And this is going to be one of those scenarios where it's probably going to be better to set your eraser to the exact same brush. So I might even go with a little bit more of a red color here. Let me clear the buffer. And yeah, there we go. So we'll just quickly paint that area in. Now this is an area that's more than likely not going to be seen, but the further around or the further to the outside of the shell we're going to get, the darker this red's going to get. So let me just assign the same brush over here to my eraser. Come in and turn on alpha, drop opacity a little bit. You know, we could actually control that right up here in our tool settings toolbar. So now I can come back and cycle back and forth between kind of my paint tool and the eraser tool. And I can start to create a little bit of a subtle gradient here between the red areas as we get closer to the iris. So come in here and sort of feather that back a little bit more. Let's go ahead and bake that down, and we'll switch over to our orthographic view and kind of see what that looks like. We'll come over in flat lighting, and now you can start to see some of that red peeking through. So looking pretty good. We might think about extending a little bit more of it in. I'm going to come in and just really lightly paint over this area here, and just, again, extend just a little bit more in. We don't want to go too far because it's going to look like his eyes are bloodshot if we do. So let me switch to the clear painting mode. Looks like I may have done just that, gone a little bit too far. And just come in here and clear a little bit of this away. But actually, if we clear this away, let me backpedal just a minute. If we clear this away, we're going to clear away sort of our yellow color also. So we're doing this on one layer. So we need to, instead of using the clear painting mode, let's just go ahead and check out our colors, see if we still have that yellow, which I don't. So let me just go ahead and pick out another yellow here. That was probably pretty close. And we'll start to slowly feather that in a little bit. All right, great. So for the last step in this eye, what I'd like to do is come in and add another paint layer. And I'm just going to rename this to veins. Nothing sells an eye like some nice little veins. So we'll come in here and grab our default brush again. And again, I'm going to shrink it down really, really, really small. And these veins are going to be something that we really probably don't need to paint them where we're not going to see them. But let me just go ahead and hit the X key. There we go. And let's go ahead and shrink the radius down to something smaller, like 4 maybe. There we go. Now we probably need to find out exactly what's visible. So I'm going to draw a little light, faint line right there and bake it down. And that's where that is. So let me just Control R and rotate that around so that kind of matches up with the orientation of the eye. And we're going to come in and just draw some squiggly lines. And I'm drawing those really, really lightly. So I'm going to kind of map these out with one pass. Might get a little darker as I get further away. Now, you never know when the character is going to shift their eyes, and more of the sclera is going to be revealed. So we probably should make sure we texture more than just what's visible through the eyelids. So we're coming in and just drawing some squiggly lines. Some happy little squiggly lines. Now, once we get those placed, let me bake those down. We can actually come in and start to darken little portions of those up, maybe where two little veins intersect, just to kind of call some attention to certain areas. Maybe even bring some of them up near the iris. Let's go ahead and kind of check that. And there we go. You can kind of see how those nice little veins are starting to show up. So again, this is kind of the process, really quick process for painting a nice believable eye for our game character here. So if we go ahead and turn on our lights again, you can see here now our character is starting to have a little bit more personality because he has eyes. So with that said, let's go ahead and in the next lesson, let's shift our attention to his hair.